Hello. So we're connected. I'm on Ethernet, so hopefully that's already jerky. Hopefully the audio is okay. Okay, let's start. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. So we're continuing on with the series on the 10 samyojana, the fetters, which are root defilements which are overcome with the various stages of enlightenment. And we've done the first 5. So what's left are usually called the higher fetters, although I think a better name for them would be the deeper fetters. These are the ones that even for the means stage of enlightenment, it's compared to arahant as having still a residue of clinging remaining. So the anagami is nearly perfected, but still, and has completely surpassed the first 5 fetters, which means that the 3 relating to view that are overcome by the stream winner, and then the 2 in the middle, sensual desire and ill will, which are weakened for the sakadagami, but for the anagami, they're completely eliminated. So the anagami is completely free of sensual desire and ill will. Those no longer occur in an anagami's stream of consciousness. So this means that an anagami, although they've gotten rid of that are dominant for the unenlightened person, they still have remaining 5 deeper underlying defilements that are not overcome until one reaches full perfection as an arahant. These 5 are craving for the existence in the form realm, craving for immaterial existence or existence in the formless realm, the asmimana, or the I am conceit, which is a more subtle form of the self view, and restlessness and ignorance. Well, these are the last 5 fetters, the ones remaining even for the sakadagami. So this evening I'm going to focus on the first of these, the craving for existence in the form realm, rupa bhumi, the realm of form. This is a variant of the defilement of bhava tanha, the desire for existence. So the anagami still has the desire for existence, but he has refined his consciousness enough that there's no longer any sensual desire. So without sensual desire, there's no motive energy. When a anagami dies, there's no impulse to be reborn in the sense desire realm, so that it's impossible for them to come to birth in either the human or the deva realm. They end up being reborn in the Sudhavasa, the pure abodes, which are classed as part of the Rupa Bhumi, or the realm of form. It's called that to contrast it with the Arupa Bhumi, which we'll talk about next week, the formless realm. So there's the realm of form and the formless realm. The Rupa Bhumi includes the Brahma gods and a couple of other kind of niche existences. The realm of the imperceptient beings, or the unconscious beings that are having practiced a yoga that suppresses consciousness. They're reborn in an unconscious state and remain that way for a very long period of time. They resemble eons of time of that realm and are reborn elsewhere. And the pseudowasa, which we're mostly concerned with here, is classed as part of that. More familiar, perhaps, are the realms of Brahma, and these are categorized in the 4 levels, which correspond to the 4 jhanas. The first level Brahmas, which are often when the word Brahma is used, it's particularly referring to this realm. These are beings that have transcended sensuality completely, so they share that with necessarily Brahmas with the asawa is extinguished. So arahant Brahmas, there is such a thing, but most Brahmas still have still subject to some defilement, although not sensuality. They have a desire for existence, and they have pride, and they can fall into false view. And there's several suttas that have stories about the Buddha teaching with the Brahmas, correcting their false view. In all the literature, whenever we encounter Brahmas in stories, in the canon or the commentaries, it's always these first level Brahmas. This is because in first jhana, Vitakka Vichara still remain, that is, the energy behind thought formation. So these Brahmas of this level are still active to some degree. They're active in the world. They can interact with devas or humans. They have speech and thought. And we have many cases in the suttas where individual Brahmas are named. And they're always of this first level. Second level Brahmas, the Abhasara Brahmas, that correspond to second jhana, which has transcended Vitakka Vichara, and the predominant factor is piti, or rapture, or joy. So these are, the name Abhasara means the radiant ones. So these Brahmas are higher than the first level Brahmas, but we don't really hear about them doing anything. Basically, they're blissed out all the time. And this applies also to the third level, Subhakina, where corresponding to third jhana, where rapture is transcended and their predominant feature is bliss. It's said that in appearance, you can distinguish between the second and third level Brahma by their radiance. All these Brahmas at each level are radiant. They emit light. They're beings of light. The Abhasara Brahmas, their aura flickers like a torch, but the Subhakina Brahma's aura is steady like the full moon, which you can see the analogy there to the difference between piti and sukha. Then the fourth level Brahmas are Vihapala Brahmas, based on equanimity. The Anagamis, however, these particular level of the pure abode, which I think we can assume is probably the germ of the later Pure Land school of Buddhism, the idea of a pure abode that is without any contamination or defilement. And it's very blissful and pleasant. And the anagamis are reborn there until they complete their path and become arhats. So they still they're still subject to that rebirth, but it's a one-way ticket. That's what they call anagami, non-returner. They don't come back. They may have more than one life in the pure abodes. There are 5 levels in the pure abodes, and it's said that the anagami can be reborn from one into the other, but always in an upward direction. So it's a one-way passage. They never return to a lower existence. And having, as I alluded to, having overcome sensuality, they have no impulse to take form again in human or Dewa existence. It's not possible. There's no, the energy that would cause such a rebirth is extinguished. But since they still have a desire for existence, there's still enough of an impulse left to cause them to take birth, but not in the human or Dewa realm, but only in this high level of the Rupa Bhumi. Now, this craving for existence in general is a deeper defilement than sensuality. At our level of existence as human beings, unless we're already at the stage of anagami, the defilement of sensuality or sense desire seems to be prominent. It's the noisiest one, let's say, but it's superficial relative to the underlying desire for existence, bhava tanha. And this also, bhava tanha also has the negative side, vibhava tanha, the desire for non-existence. But this doesn't apply to the anagami. It's a negative defilement that has to do with ill will. It's an underlying factor for ill will. But bhava tanha remains in the form of desire for immaterial existence to the anagami. So I can see the chat is already quite busy, and I think I'll stop with the introduction and go into answering questions. Let me just get this in legible form. Okay. First one. Even if someone is not consciously craving for rebirth in any of these realms, if one is not an arahant, one is sort of forced into rebirth. Correct. One is reborn against one's will. Yeah, you could say that. I mean, it's not so much you're forced, but it's because there's no one doing the forcing, but it's an automatic process. But if you're not an arahant, there will still be a craving for existence and a craving to take birth, even if it's not very evident or conscious. There's still a desire to take birth. And if sensual desire is prominent, that will tend towards a rebirth in the sense desire realm as either human or Dewa, or if you have made bad karma in the lower realms. If you have developed spiritually enough to transcend to some degree or the sensual impulse, and but have an experience of jhana, tendency for rebirth. A moment stable and long, is it related to Vatu Rupa, or more specifically to one of the Pachaya? How could a Brahma who's attained arahantship still exist and not be extinguished until the end of their lifespan? Um, Jhanic chitta is stable in the sense that it remains uh, arising upon a single object. This is ekagata, unity of mind. Um, it's it's a factor of the quality of samadhi, the sankhara of samadhi. Um, an arahant who's attained arahantship, or a Brahma who's attained arahantship, still exists. We do have mention of that in the suttas. There's a couple of mentions of the way it's phrased is a Brahma with the asawas extinguished, kina asawa. So that I think it's just like a human being. A human being attain arahantship and still continue on in physical existence until their death. I think that the same with the Brahma. They just continue on in their existence until their time runs out. How can craving cause craving endlessly? Is this not a causal paradox? Um, I don't see how I don't see how it's any kind of a logical problem. Craving, if a person is not enlightened, then craving will arise in each moment for an object. Um, it's just a natural impulse. I wouldn't say it's so much a craving causes craving, but this craving is arising in the stream of dependent origination from sense contact and from feeling. You know, it's just a natural, automatic process. Okay, this looks like a long one, and we're several paragraphs. The fifth and sixth jhanas are explicitly labeled as infinitude of space and infinitude of consciousness. To quote the Buddha, mind takes pleasure, finds satisfaction, settles and indulges in perception of dimension of infinitude of space. Does this assert that space and consciousness are in fact infinite, or that the concept of infinity is not subjectively inconceivable? And so, what does infinity actually mean? Something that's constantly growing and never ending, or something that's all embracing, infinitely full, and lacking nothing? Um, the actual phrase in the Pali is apamana, boundless. I don't think that by referring to these fifth and sixth jhanas, the first two formless jhanas, I don't think there's necessarily any metaphysical assumption made about the actual infinity of space or consciousness, but that one perceives these either space or consciousness as without bounds, so without a boundary or a limit. Meaning really that nothing is perceived outside of that, right? So boundless space is just empty space. And I suppose there's some implication of infinity, but that's not the point that's really emphasized. As for infinity of consciousness, uh, one one monk has suggested that the experience of this jhana of infinite consciousness may be the origin of the Upanishads' view about Atman and being one with Brahma, um, because the infinite consciousness without bounds. If you have bounds, that assumes that means there's something outside of those bounds. If it's boundless, it encompasses everything. Next one. Do you view Mara as a personal deity with the capacity to watch 8 billion people simultaneously, or do you see him as a metaphor or natural force? Actually, in the commentaries, they actually deal with this and distinguish between different kinds of Mara. There is Mara as a being called Mara Deva Puta, Mara as a Deva, who's an actual being that interacts in the world, but it seems that he doesn't really bother with ordinary people, but becomes interested only when beings are approaching a point where, from the sensual, he makes a project before enlightenment. So I don't think there is any implication that he's watching, every being in the world. But Mara as a defilement is Mara used as a metaphor for our own impulses and desires and so on. Could Ajahn elaborate about the brokenness of dukkha as a characteristic in samsara after manifestation? Now, this questioner is quoting from some of my previous talks. I think that the way I like to try and explain the dukkha, the essence of the meaning of dukkha, as a brokenness or incompleteness. The idea is that when look at the emptiness conceived as a blank annihilation kind of idea, but as non-manifestation. So it's void of any particularity, but it has an infinite potential. Because nothing is manifest, anything is possible. But once something becomes manifest, whether it's a being or an object or a force, it's no longer complete, it's no longer perfect, it's only like a fragment. So it's a broken bit, and it can never be perfect, and it can never persist. So the very fact of existence or manifestation implies a kind of brokenness, an imperfection. Next question. Beyond sila and overcoming the hindrance, what are the best places for obtaining first jhana? Please. Also, when is total seclusion necessary to complete silence or deep studying in a library, for example? Well, there's for experiencing jhana, there's certainly the external conditions